Hello, 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 and welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to my favorite series to do on this channel. I Know That Nerd, with one of my favorite people in the fandom that I know, Aziz.
Hello,
Aziz.
Stephen. Thanks for having me. It's great to try this again. Electric Boogaloo, part 2.
Yeah, if you guys remember last time, we had some serious audio issues, and hopefully this time you're coming through loud and clear. I'm sure everyone will let us know if you're not.
Right on. See a few cool people that I recognize in the chat there.
Yeah, there's already quite a few great folks here in the chat today. I see some regulars, but I see some faces that I don't normally see during my stream. And hello and welcome to all of you. So Aziz, not that you really need an introduction, but tell everyone who you are, what you do, and where they can find your stuff.
Cool. Well, I am Aziz from the History of Westeros podcast, and I've been doing this for 7 years now, I guess. And I read the books back in 2001 and became a fan pretty quickly. And like a lot of y'all, once you read the books and then you went to the forums or whatever and realized you didn't really know as much as you thought you did. I was certainly one of those people. I didn't even catch John being the son of Lyanna and Rhaegar. So there you go. And you can find us at historyofwesteros.com. We're on most of the social media sites, Twitter and Facebook. We have a Facebook group. We have we just started the Slack. We're going to start a Discord very soon. One of our generous patrons / listeners who goes by the name of Sir Slorp had actually made it for us a little while ago, actually. I haven't launched it yet, but it'll be certainly up soon. I wanted to definitely get it up before we start doing a Storm of Swords on our read-through. So
you said Slack. Do you mean Flick?
No, I meant Slack. We just started on Slack, but we also have Flick. I neglected to mention Flick, so thank you. We also have a great reread community going on Flick, where there's a couple of really excellent contributors and a lot of other people adding their thoughts as well.
I read that stuff, but I don't really contribute because I'm not. Full disclosure, this takes a lot of time. A lot more time goes into a YouTube channel than I originally anticipated. So I have not been able to keep up with the reread, but like I do, go in there and read people's thoughts on specific chapters. And, I've read the series 4 times, so I'm pretty familiar anyway. And then, your live streams are always fantastic.
Thanks.
And I got to get in on that Slack group too.
Yeah, you should. You are invited.
All right.
And so, I'm here in Boston. If anyone didn't recognize my background, or if you didn't see the Valor Readus earlier today, I'm at the household of Radio Westeros. So how cool is that? It is snowy here. I haven't seen snow in a couple years. So how about that?
Nice. Yeah, cool. Radio Westeros, probably they're up there. They're on they're definitely on the list of people to have on. I Know That Nerd.
Right on.
Would love to have them, but right now we've got Aziz. And Aziz, I think I said this when we had all those audio issues, but I'm going to say it again. When I started this series, you were the first name I put on the list of people to have.
Oh, well, I'm honored. That's great. Thank you, Stephen.
But and it's more than just about you being a nice guy, which you do. You're a good man. I've known you for a few years now. Yeah. And you've always been you've always read to me as like a really good guy, but the things you personally have done to build this community through your collaborations with other people, through constantly promoting people who are new content creators in the community. Heck, you're coming on my channel. You're just continuing the tradition of what you do. And when I had Ashaya on, I referred to you as the godfather of the fandom. Something like he hates being called that. So I'm not the only one that thinks of you that way, though.
Well, it's the reason I'm not. I don't dislike it. I don't hate it. She may have been exaggerating a little bit, but I like it depending on where it's coming from. Like when you say it, I like it. But there was a couple people who said it because they had the impression that the mafia style Godfather. Not that I'm killing people or anything, but that. Just that kind of underlying, like telling people what to do or making things happen behind the scenes. It's, rumors. I mean, there's rumors that I was just in Santa Fe and there's already a rumor that I was helping George write The Winds of Winter, which of course that's silly.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I know you were just in Santa Fe, and there is a question that is coming about your experience one evening.
Cool. Yeah.
Fine city.
Be glad to talk about that. Santa Fe was fun.
Right on. And so, now you said it last time. We're retreading some ground from the last our last attempt. So, you've read the books when in the early or late 90s? I mean, early 2000s.
Yeah. Basically, my origin story was for A Song of Ice and Fire. Is I have a friend named Alex, and he's well, not as much as he used to be. He's got a family now. Avid fantasy reader, but you know how it goes. You don't have time for as much as you can. But he had a good track record of recommending books to me that I liked. And he had, for example, he introduced me to the Wheel of Time. Wheel of Time, at the time, there's only 6 or 7 books out. And arguably those were the best batch of, like, most of the best of that series is in that first part. Not that the ending is bad. I read the whole thing. But most people seem to think the early parts of that series were the best. And so I read the books that were out and was like, that was really good. And kept up with that series until it was finished. And in 2001 or 2000, he handed me book 1 of Game of Thrones and said, read this. It wasn't, you should read this. It wasn't, you might like this. It was a demand. Right. So, because he had credibility, I was like, all right. And I had a long car ride coming. So it was a good timing. And like I said, I missed so much. I think I'm a vastly, vastly better reader than I used to be because it's because of this community and thanks to George R. R. Martin writing in ways that if you want to know what's happening, you have to really be into it. You have to really think about it and understand literary techniques, things I obviously didn't understand before I came into the fandom, or I would have been getting those things right away. But things that I was probably taught in college at some point, it just went right through.
Right.
And but I don't, didn't have a lot of meaning at the time. But in the long term though, I feel like, and it's sort of along the lines of things you said. In a lot of what I've learned about A Song of Ice and Fire comes from other people's methods or collaborating with other people, and I'm pretty good at looking at something someone else does and breaking it down and kind of being and finding the parts of it that are working. And because I used to be an IT guy, so that's like the life you lead when you're testing software, like this works, right, etc. And some of my other things I did for a living were similar in that regard. But the point being, you pick up, like you work with someone else, like I don't know, work with like Emmett Booth or something, and realize how eloquent he is and how great he is at thinking about themes and certain meta topics that I can't even put into words, which is the point. He's really good at putting some of these things into words. Or look at someone like, or just to someone who has a different background as me, just like any female YouTuber is going to have a different life experience as me, especially on, not just in life, but on YouTube.
Right. And, for sure.
So just hearing, or people who grew up in other countries, they're going to read the books a little differently. They're not necessarily going to theorize differently, but just like the cultural things that come up, or like the way George describes gender roles, or the way inner thoughts happen with certain characters. It's going to touch things that we may not all realize touch other people. And that's the beauty of it all, is that there's something for everyone, but I want to kind of know what some of those other things are for other people.
Right on. Well, and I couldn't agree more. I've always considered myself, I'm a smart guy, but being a member of this fandom has educated me in ways I never would have imagined.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, for example, I'm trying to think of something I learned from A Song of Ice and Fire that just doesn't seem to be all that related to A Song of Ice and Fire, but I think just a lot of bits about well, what's a good example? I mean, I guess just writing techniques. We talked about that already, so that's a good one to bring back. Like, I never thought a lot about, as a reader, I never thought a whole lot about even things like character arcs. I didn't think about too much. They just were a thing that were normal, but they just happen, and you don't have to be super aware of them to enjoy them because they're familiar. The patterns are familiar, even if you don't exactly know what you're dealing with. Even if you've never sat down to study the hero's journey, right. If you ever do, you go, oh, I knew a lot of this already. I just didn't put it into words or conceptualize it this way. And yeah, I see a comment here from Sarah Charles that says it really is a portal to humanity. And that's a wonderful way to put it, because that is, I think that's what I was trying to get at when I was saying things that I learned from A Song of Ice and Fire that aren't to do with books or reading or fantasy or characters. Just the way some of these things apply to real life, like thinking about, like just today in Valerie Reedus, we talked about Sansa having her first period, which is a guy, I don't know anything about that other than what I've been told, and it's not much. So I have to look and ask our female, watchers and listeners and commenters, like, how authentic was this? And, they say it was very authentic. So that's cool. But that's beside the point. The point is that that's something I had no idea about. There are other reasons I might have learned that.
You just made me have a little image of George doing his research on that topic.
Maybe he just asked Paris.
Maybe.
Or his assistants.
Right? Okay, so you are the biggest A Song of Ice and Fire nerd that I know. But you didn't start off as a Song of Ice and Fire nerd. Do you remember what was your favorite fandom? Or what was the fandom that made you go, okay, I am a nerd?
I'm not sure, but I was introduced to... maybe it'll come to me as I'm talking here, but I think my first real nerd experience as a fan was watching Star Wars. I mean, I was into Star Wars when I was super young. I'm 44, and so I went to Return of the Jedi in the theaters. The other two I was too young for those two, but I saw them on a tape. We had I don't know how my family got video copies of these, but they had them in the early 80s. So I saw those, and that was like a pretty big revelation for a 7-year-old. I was playing with Star Wars toys from then on, along with G.I. Joe. And I guess I started reading fantasy, but I'm not sure when. But I definitely started reading fantasy in like middle school or high school. I read I think maybe the first thing I read was Dragon Riders of Pern, but I also read Dragonlance, so maybe I have that reversed. Dragonlance. Definitely dragon stuff, clearly. Dragonlance, Dragon Riders of Pern. Well, there's a theme there.
Here be dragons. So
yeah, right on. We're on point. And so I guess it was, and I actually didn't read Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit until much later.
Same.
I'm not sure why, but
your path is not too different than mine, although mine is like Dungeons and Dragons got me into the rest of fantasy. But I read some Dragon Riders. I read Dragonlance. Yeah.
I did play D&D. That is probably what got me into it, actually. I didn't really think about that. But now that you mentioned D&D, yeah, I played a good bit of D&D 2nd edition. And that's probably, although I don't remember how I got started on that. That's probably just a friend of mine was like, let's try this. And I was like, dragons, cool, dice, yes.
Right?
Let's do it. Magic items, yeah.
I do love me some D&D.
Happiness +3.
Right? So then you progress through your life being a nerd on some level, and did you go to college? Because I actually know a little bit about your life story already. We've talked behind the scenes a lot, but I think you've led a pretty interesting life. You've done a lot of stuff that most people will never get to do. You've played cards professionally in more than one way.
Well, yeah, so I guess I started playing Magic the Gathering in just before college. It was a game that a lot of people started playing. It's much bigger now, obviously. This is when it was so it was, anyone who knows Magic the Gathering, I started around Revised Edition, which
that's very early on. That was
that was the 3rd edition. No, 4th edition. There was Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, Revised, and then they actually called it 4th edition after that. So it's confusing because 4th edition is kind of like 5th edition. But Alpha and Beta were the same cards, they just were printed differently. So you can kind of call that one set. For collectors, it's 2 very distinct sets, but the cards are identical except for the.
Did you know that Beta cards are generally worth more than Alpha cards?
Yes, they are worth way more. Yeah, it's crazy. I have a sad story about that because I used to own. I built a pretty big collection up over time. Sure. And the whole thing got stolen. and I live with Sean, who works in the Magic business, pricing cards. So very often I hear what these cards are worth that I had stolen in college, and it makes me sad. I could like pay off my house if I had those cards. No kidding. I had like 50 dual lands. I had 2 sets of Moxes.
Oh wow, a dual land is
those are like $500 though.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're Beta duels. They're $500.
Yeah, it's funny because my first starter deck I ever opened had a dual land in it, and I was like, "What is this crap? I don't care about land. I want big flying creatures."
I remember a time when I could have bought a Black Lotus for $5, but I'm like, "There's no way I'm ever going to pay $5 for one card."
You wish you had bought 1,000 of them at $5 a pop.
No kidding. Fast forward to 2019, and I will happily pay $20 for the right card.
Yeah, those things are like a Black Lotus, like a mint pristine Black Lotus can go for over 10K, I think. Now.
Yeah, the most expensive card ever sold. Now, there was a story with it. It was opened out of a booster box live on a camera on someone's channel, but it sold for $27,000.
27? Oh man, I've lost touch with that one. That's gone past the price I remembered at. Jeez.
That is not a normal price, but that one had a story because again, the guy was like, that's what his channel does. He opens old Magic stuff, and he opened a beta starter deck, and it had a Lotus in it.
Wow, that's neat because old beta packs were searchable. Beta starters you couldn't search, but you could search the beta packs, like you could see through it. So you should. That was an old thing that never buy loose beta packs because they'll be really expensive, and you won't get a Mox because it'll have been you'll open like one of the crappy rares from that era.
Right.
And yeah, so. Yep, which is one of the reasons why I stopped playing Magic. Not because of that, but because it became clear that there was a lot of cheating. That was a big turnoff. And it was very hard for them to police the cheating because it's simple. They are better at it now. They're better at policing cheating now because they know the techniques that cheaters use. But I was playing in the early days. It was like the Wild West of Magic, which also in some ways it was easier because the average Pro Tour player is definitely more skilled than the people in my era because it's just harder. Right. There's more people playing. It makes sense. There's just people who have been playing for 20 years, whereas before there was no such thing as someone who had played Magic for 20 years.
Right.
So it's always the next generation's always, almost always smarter than the previous generation when it comes to not wiser necessarily, but smarter. So that certainly applies to Magic. But yeah, so then after Magic, that was during college. So I don't know if I did that professionally, but I was on the Pro Tour. I had made enough money at it to not be a broke college student, but I was still pretty close to a broke college student. It mostly just was paying for itself. It just would pay for these trips. We'd drive 10 hours to go to some tournament. And that was gas money. But and then so the second type of cards, you referenced my other form of card playing, which is much more significant. Because I really did make a living at it, and that's poker. And a lot of Magic players in my day, and now still as well, do both. Although back then it was more of a transition. People were transitioning from Magic to poker because online poker was not such a big deal back then. And poker had its real heyday in the U.S. around 2003 and 4, and a little before that when ESPN was just constantly showing it on TV. It was the third most watched sport. Not getting into a debate whether it's a sport or not, but things shown on ESPN, so it was that really made poker extremely profitable. There was a lot of people playing, a lot of people who didn't know what they were doing, and it was a good time to be a poker player. So I'm lucky that I discovered it when I did, because I was in IT at the time. I got into an IT job. I was pretty good at it, and I wrote some software for inventory management software that got used by Compaq, and who is now HP, and Walmart used it, not for external inventory management, not for managing inventory in their stores. That is wicked complicated, major.
I work in the
supply side system, so I was dealing with IT side inventory, which is there's more types of inventory, but you don't have large amounts of any of it. Because not more types than everything Walmart puts on their shelves. That's an insane number of things. But for example, if they're trying to build a server and it's a high-end server, it's the kind of parts that only the Department of Defense has access to other than them. They're building the most fancy servers in the country. And these parts come in as they come in. They don't have since these are the most high-tech things there are, they can't just build everything they want. So they needed some way to manage these processes. What parts do we actually have on hand right now to build, which servers can actually be built?
So you're keeping a live inventory going. Yeah, that is much more complicated.
But it's also, the difficulty with that also is that, and the reason we were able to sell this to them, well, not me, but my boss sold it to them, was because these are, again, the highest value parts in the world. The most expensive, rare server parts that are being made. So these things would just disappear from the shelves of the warehouses all the time. The people who worked there told me stories about people some people surely got away with it, but some people were blatant and like sold the stuff on eBay and was like, hello, you're going to get caught doing that. And there are people who got caught doing that, but still, because it goes to show that was a real need. So we barcoded everything, and that was like a big thing. So that is neat to be. One of the cool things about being a consultant that kind of relates to A Song of Ice and Fire is you get put into a lot of situations where you have no idea what's going on. You have to learn about how these people do their business, learn all the ins and outs of how their business processes work, and then try to, fix that or improve it or capture it in a logistical system. And so I think that was good training and seeing perspective and learning how, because you have to think about how someone else is going to interact with your system. It's not, as an end user, how's an end user going to use your system? What are they going to do?
Right.
How, thinking about barcodes, how feasible is it to barcode everything? Like, you're talking about memory sticks that are this big. Like, how do you barcode that? And
I can do it.
Yeah, you can. I bet you can. So I transitioned. So while I was doing that, the company I was working for had full of good ideas, but was not managed by good people. Okay. They were a family, and I was too young. And this is the kind of thing that I would see a mile away now. And I'm 44, but of course that doesn't do me any good now. But as a 22-year-old or whatever I was, very naive, no idea. The company there were all sorts of shady hints, like little tidbits of things they did that I was like, man, I really should have seen that as a sign of a bigger thing. At one point, they just ran out of money, and we believed in this product that it would eventually do well. And at one point, they owed us all 11 paychecks, which we got all at once one day. I got a FedEx with 11 paychecks. That was pretty cool. But I should have left then. But yeah. then they started to fall behind again, and like not too long after, and we found out that they were doing shenanigans with the stock, and they were doing shenanigans with other stuff. And my immediate manager quit and offered some of us to come with her, and we did. And so we were then in charge of our own destiny a lot more, because it was our company. It was the four of us. And while doing that, I was playing poker on the side, and I started to just make a lot more money playing poker. So I just eventually moved on and sold my stake in that company.
So I take it you're actually a pretty good Hold'em player then. If you made money, if you made money playing poker, yeah. But Hold'em is the only game you can really play and continue to make money.
Well, there are other games you can play that are good to know, because sometimes, like if you're on an online poker site, there's going to be lots of no limit Hold'em and limit Hold'em and some limit Hold'em. Now, I was a limit Hold'em guy. I wasn't very good at no limit Hold'em. And that was the really popular game, but there was enough bleed over to limit Hold'em that there was still plenty of action for me. But I learned how to play pot limit Omaha and Omaha 8 deuce to 7, or not deuce to 7, Omaha high low, and Raz.
Don't know those.
All these other games, which are on online sites, but a lot of times no one's playing them. Sometimes every once in a while you find someone playing them. And one of the games I really liked was Horse, which is Hold'em, Omaha, Raz, 7-card stud, and 8 or better. Yeah, exactly like that. It's supposed to be like that. So every cycle around the table, the game changes.
Okay.
And until it rotates back to the beginning.
Interesting. So, I would love to play some Hold'em with you.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be fun. It'd be fun to get a game together sometime.
I don't know that I'm good enough to come, to even try to want to be a professional, but like, because I also recognize that when you're playing against other people who are playing for real money, they're not the kind that sit down at the table, get, 2-7 offsuit, go all in on their first hand anyway, and then flop 2 7s, and I'm just like, no, I hate playing with you. All in is not something you do early in the game ever, I do enjoy playing against other people who know the game, but against those type of people, I tend to win till they get lucky on that 2-7 flop,
Yeah. It's true. What's funny is back in the really early days when there was, people were as bad as they've ever been, you would see people do that, but they would do it passively. Like if you're going to do that, it works better if you're going to be aggressive, because you might get someone to fold. Mm-hmm. And of course, then they can't read you later and say, oh, if he's betting big, he must have a big hand. Because no, I've seen him bet big with crap. So you can't. Yeah. be too sure. But that's getting into the weeds.
I have almost the opposite approach, where I want people to think I will only bet when I have something good.
So that way you can occasionally
but that takes setting it up throughout the game, you know.
Yeah. And people do that with just the way they look sometimes. You can one thing I've noticed is that I encountered a few female professionals who used sexism against their opponents, as in they expected their opponents to be sexist and to treat them less seriously, and they were right, and they would take advantage of that and crush them. And I really enjoyed seeing it.
That's fantastic.
And a lot of them would dress like they're not a professional. They would dress like they're on vacation, like they dress up like all hot, like they're going out in the town. And this is a professional poker player, or at least someone who's really good. I'm not sure myself, because if I'm visiting Vegas, I don't know this person. I can tell that they're a pro, but I don't know that they do this every night as far as dressing up a certain way. But I can appreciate the smoothness and the like sticking it to these guys who are taking these women too lightly.
Oh, by the way, I wanted to say hi to someone specifically in the chat.
Okay.
To Pedar Ruan.
Hey.
He's the guy that comes for my Expanse stuff. Pedar, you might be the only one here who doesn't know who Aziz is, but I will tell you this. He is the guy that convinced me to watch The Expanse to begin with.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, right. That's true.
And which circles back to the thing you were saying earlier about coming into the A Song of Ice and Fire story. You were recommended by someone whose opinion you trusted. I was recommended The Expanse by someone I trusted, and thank God you did, man. It's my favorite show that is still on the air right now.
Oh, cool.
I'm in love with it, and it comes out in like 5 days.
Yeah, so soon. We're 4. Yeah, it's the 8th, so it's the 12th, I think. Very exciting.
Yeah, it's Friday night.
Oh, okay.
Or is it? Because I don't know. Is it the 12th or the 13th?
Maybe it is. Maybe it is the 13th. Anyway,
it's one or the other. But that show that's my favorite show. I love me some Amos, and I wouldn't even know about it, or wouldn't be aware of it really if it weren't for you and Ashaya.
We watched it with you at your house, right? Isn't that what we did?
That is correct. The first episode, and I said this during some stream that we've done on The Expanse, that the first episode I ever saw was the Moneo slingshot episode.
Oh, that was the first one you saw? That's a wonderful first
and
one.
You're right.
If it's going to be out of order, that's a really good one. Wow.
We watched it in my living room, and I was like, and then you guys spent, I don't know, 2 hours hyping that show to me after that.
We did. We love it.
and that was con weekend, and things are what it is. And it got backburnered for a little while, but I eventually made it around to watching it. And man, I wish I had been there for, the hashtag Save the Expanse,
That was quite a journey, but it was also nerve-wracking because because it came out well, it's good, but I mean, seeing a fandom come out like that, they really just came out so big to try to save it. We've seen fan commitments like that before to try to save a show, but I don't think I've seen one quite that dedicated or that intense or that people spending money on it. Like they built that fake Rocinante and sent it into space or whatever as a stunt, and like I can't remember any attempt to save a show that ever reached those heights.
I think the Firefly people tried really, really hard, but that was also like pre-social media days, so it was
they couldn't. It was harder to organize people back
then. The difference between tweeting a thing and that getting shared and retweeted and blah 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 versus taking out an ad in the paper.
Yeah, what a huge difference. Yeah.
Firefly fan yourself?
Yeah, I am a Firefly fan. I agree with some of the retroactive criticisms of it. Well, there was one major criticism, which was that it's all this set in the future that's so Asian without any Asian characters.
Okay, that's fair.
But that's like one complaint. Otherwise, it's great. It's fantastic. And I feel like a lot of other shows may have kind of borrowed from it because they saw like it was successful but didn't succeed. Right? Like in a weird way. Like, right? So they were like, well, if we do this a little differently, this could work really well. And just, the studio's a little more behind it. They give it a little more of a chance. Shows aren't treated that way anymore. That's another thing. Like that's the era of shows being treated that badly or not being given more of a chance. it still happens a little bit, but not as much because it's just not a very good method for them either. It's not like they want to make more of a commitment to a show, fewer commitments, but longer commitments, and let it find itself and let people get into it and let it develop. Because everybody knows that season ones are often, sometimes they're the best, but sometimes they're also the ones where the characterizations are the least settled at that point. Like, take a show that, like The Office. They start off with Michael being like David Brent, and eventually he's his own character. And that's just a lot of these, like a lot of characters, they feel they're like X-Files. They had Mulder be like a excitable geek in the pilot. Then he's more of a morose, kind of laid back, like slightly traumatized guy, or maybe more than slightly. But anyway, things like that, where there's like they're finding their way. So they want to give people more of a chance to do that. I appreciate that.
The show Community feels that way to me. I don't know if you ever watched that show.
Oh, I love Community. Yeah, that's a good one.
Season 1, it's still fantastic, but they feel more like caricatures. And then in later seasons, they feel more like characters, you know?
Yeah, like the idea of Britta and Jeff dating was like the only thing in episode 1. And then like later, it's like, those two dated? You know, it's like when they had a relationship, like that's why. You know?
And Abed went from being sort of like, well, again, he's probably autistic and sees everything through the lens of TV and movies. And I think that was started as sort of like a shtick so that they could be self-referential with what they were actually doing in each episode. But, you know, at some point he becomes a very human character, although still a deeply flawed one.
Mm-hmm. Well put. Yeah.
All right. So there was a question somebody asked me, and I'm going to pull up my Twitter real quick and look that up. Somebody wanted to know, and I think I know who it is, but I can't remember 100%, and I don't want to say the wrong name. Okay. Excuse me.
No problem.
So it was Dudson Warren, the head.
Oh yeah, Warren. Nice. I got to meet him in Ireland.
Yeah, Warren Dudson, I guess, but at Dudson Warren.
Yeah.
You know, he wants to know, what is your fondest recollection from meeting George R.R. Martin?
Ooh, okay. Good one. I've met him a few times, so maybe I'll think of the first time I met him would be the time I met him, I guess. And there may be some luck involved there. We made a point to start going to conventions that George was at, and he likes to go to small conventions. And the reason for that is, at a small convention, he acts kind of like a regular person, which he always wants to do, but he can't because he's too famous. And so he likes to go to conventions because that's what he came up on. He was going to conventions in the 60s and 70s. So he still loves that. And so it was more Shea's idea than mine to start going to some of these conventions and try to meet him. We know people that know him. We know Brotherhood Without Banners people. That's the original fan group, and thought I might be able to at least meet them. And maybe if we get lucky, we'll meet George. So we go to the first time we met him was, I think, at Con Carolinas, and that would be North Carolina. And he was one of the guests of honor, and it was a great experience. Before we met him, we didn't know a lot about him, but we knew he generally had a good reputation as a good person and all that. So our first experience with that personally was we get in line to get some books signed, right? And the line is big enough that it goes outside. And again, this is a small convention, so they were maybe not prepared for that, but it wasn't a big deal. However, we were looking at our watch, like, the signing is going to end pretty soon, and we're not that close to the front of the line. But then one of his assistants comes out and is like, George says that everyone will get their stuff signed. If you're in line, you'll get your thing signed. So we were like, oh, that's cool. So he's just, giving more of his time to make sure. And probably some of that is he has gone to a lot of conventions. He's been on the other side of it. He's probably waited in line to get something signed and had felt the disappointment of not getting it signed. That's probably happened for him. Maybe it's been a long time since he's became a famous enough author. He could probably get whatever he wanted signed, but still, there was probably a point at which he was on the opposite side of that. And from there, I guess we went to some parties. Like it's very normal, especially at smaller conventions, but also larger conventions for people to just throw parties in their room. And we went to a couple of different parties, and one of the parties, there was a cutout of Randall Thor, because there was some Robert Jordan stuff there. And turns out Robert Jordan's niece was there. And we're just sitting there chatting with some people, hanging out, and George just walks in with his assistant Rhea, as if he's just some normal person, and grabs a beer, sits in the corner, and everyone's just kind of like, and a circle forms around him. Next thing you know, George is just sitting there telling con stories. And
like
from the 70s,
it feels like holding court in the corner of the room, right?
Yes, exactly.
I'm sure it is, because I mean,
you can picture it.
I've been to Con of Thrones. I've been in a room with a lot of different people that I consider like fandom celebrities. But if George walked in the room, everybody would just be like,
all of a sudden, no one else is a celebrity, and only he is. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He's become the only celebrity in the room all of a sudden.
The biggest potato in the room just becomes potatoes at that point, and
yeah,
there's the main course.
And it's funny that you say holding court, because it's a hotel room, so there's only like one or two chairs. So he really was like the only guy sitting. Everybody else is standing around him. So it really was like he was on a throne, and everyone's like petitioning him for stories. And some people asked, anyone who's been to a Q&A or just heard about Q&As, people ask some of the worst questions. And one time, like someone asked, Mr. Martin, what was your inspiration for the character Hodor? And he's like, I just thought of him. It didn't come from any particular place.
Right.
It's just an invention. And someone else was like, Mr. Martin. He was like a dude in a black wife beater. And he comes and he's like, Mr. Martin, will you sign my chest? George looks at him. He's like, no. And turns around and starts telling stories about how he did sign a lot of breasts in the 70s. And the guy just kind of faded into the background there. But within a couple hours, Shea has moved over to talk to Rhea, and that's one of George's assistants, and she's super talented in her own right. She just put out this book Starport that was written by George, and she did the animations, and Rhea was showing it to me at Worldcon. It is really good and really funny too. So worth checking out for sure. Rhea Golden, she's really good. Shea and Rhea kind of like hit it off a bit, and Shea was wearing that Westeros dress. George took note of it and was like, the wall is like right here at her chest, and he joked about the wall being up at the top there, and Shea said it should have been the twins. And I said, don't ask about the bloody gate, and then I wish I hadn't said that. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Aziz. Thanks for that.
That's worse. Yeah. No, kick me out. Okay, stream's over. So
I'm not letting you off the hook. We're going to spend the next hour ridiculing you for that.
And then so George is ready to leave at some point, and he's, but then Rhea comes over to Shea and is like, George wants, is inviting you all to come up with him to his room. And there's like 6 or 7 of us who go up there, and it's like 3 or 4 BWB people and me and Shea, who we're now in the BWB, but we weren't then.
Right.
And we hardly interacted with him in his own room. We sat there in a group of like 5 of us and chatted, but he went and like one of the old school BWBers started talking politics with him, and they just sat in the corner and talked politics for like hours. And we just, eventually he was done and came to us and was like, here, take these things. Every time I go to a convention, people bring me brownies or cookies or give me canned beers, and I cannot take it all, or I definitely can't eat it all. So please take some of this. So we took, I took a Blondie and a can of beer, and I saved that can of beer, and it only recently was lost because we had it up on a shelf for 7 years or 5 or 6 years, and a cat knocked it down and it kind of
spewed.
Yeah, basically. That was that, but the memory remains.
Yeah.
So he was just really cool, really down to earth. I mean, like I said, he's walking to a party and just starts talking to people like he's not a very famous man. And
but that's he is a very famous man, but he's still a human being,
Definitely, and that's something I've heard from some of his assistants because I'm friends with a few of them, and they've explained that experience, like what it's like being out in public with George, and how he still tries to walk around like a normal person sometimes. Like he forgets Like or maybe it's willful, like it's like willful stubbornness that he wants to be able to walk around like a normal person. They're like, then they have to go in and keep people off of him. They're constantly like, nope, he's just wanting to enjoy his day. No autographs right now, please.
Yeah, I mean, it would be hard for me not to, gawk if he walked by. But like, if he's not there to do a signing, I'm not going to ask him for his autograph.
Yeah, that's just not cool. Yeah,
I might shout, "I love you, George," but that's probably the limit of what I've met several celebrities in my life. Just happened to cross paths with some here and there, and like, to me, it always seems like you could acknowledge that you recognize them, but like, don't try to make it weird, man. Don't try to make it weird.
Yeah, for real.
Warren also wants to know, when are you coming back to Ireland?
Well, I definitely want to go back. It was really great. I mean, not just the amazing Game of Thrones filming locations, but just Ireland in general was super fun. Really like laid back, kind of creative, without generalizing a bit, obviously, but that is the impression we got from where we were around. Like, it's a small place, so you can really get around and see a lot of it. Ireland is, if it were a U.S. state, it would be the 48th largest. So it's really small comparatively. But if it were ranked in terms of natural beauty, it would be in the top 3 or 4. So there you go. And it's also small population-wise, like 6 million people. So it's like small. It would be like one of the smallest U.S. states. So
that is like the population of the metropolitan area I live in is probably about 6 million.
Yeah,
people.
it's just way smaller than New York. That's the size of Atlanta, roughly. Like, yeah, it's not big at all, but it really packs a punch. Like I said, the natural beauty is it's not an exaggeration. They call it, the land of emerald or whatever. And
Emerald Isle.
Super green, Emerald Isle. Yeah, it's green. It's super green. We just constantly were driving by farmlands, and because we drove a lot. We put in like 2,500 kilometers on our car. Peter is asking when I was in Ireland. We were there from August 12th to the 20-something. It was about 14th to 26th. Yeah. 14th.
Peter is from Ireland, lives in Ireland.
Oh, cool. Right on. I might have guessed that with that name. Met a few other Pedars there and have never met one elsewhere. And just the convention started. We were in Dublin for Worldcon and then to TitanCon in Belfast. And that was just such a good opportunity. 2 conventions back-to-back weekends in Ireland with George at both of them. Like, that is, in our line of work, that was like, we have to try to make that. And then we were lucky enough to have someone who wanted to go with us, Christina. Shout out to Christina Triple.
Yeah. And, on the I Know That Nerd list, for those of you who are asking.
Cool. And she was really important because neither Ashay or I had, well, for a lot of reasons, but one thing in particular, neither Ashay or I have an Airbnb like rental history. I have like one stay on my own thing. Now I have like ones that I'm with other people. Right. And so we tried to reserve a place and they just rejected us. We're like, no, you have no rental history and you're from another country. We're not going to do this. So, but Christina had she travels more. So saved our butts on that one.
That's cool. And Christina's pretty cool lady.
Definitely. Yeah. She was really fun. She's, outgoing, and, that was good to have in our group.
best lady rapper in the Song of Ice and Fire fandom.
Yeah, without her, we would have gone to fewer filming locations. Shay and I are like slow to get going in the morning, but Christina's like, "Let's do this." We're like, "All right, you're leading. Let's go."
Right on. Yeah, I mean, I remember the time when you were there because there were many of us who were having conversations behind your back about how jealous we were about.
Yeah, I can understand that. I would have been jealous too, probably. What was I going to say? To answer the question though more directly, as many filming locations as we went to, we didn't even see half of them. Right. So there's a fantastic reason to go back because they're not just like it's not just the novelty of the filming location. A few of them are just a little bit novel, but most of them are like, this is an incredible location. How are all these incredible locations in one small island? I mean, the Dothraki Sea was filmed in Northern Ireland near Belfast. That's not like Spain or one of those like deserty locations. And like within 30 minutes, you're at the rope bridge that was inspired the Euron Balon scene and the Kingsmoot and all that. It's like, how do you go from that to that in 30 minutes? Those kind of types of sites. It's incredible. You got these tall cliffs with wind and beautiful, like crystal clear water. And then 30 minutes, you're in some incredible, like deep forest.
Yeah. The only place I've been that fits that type of description, there are places in Southern California where you can ski in the morning, drive for an hour, and then surf in the afternoon.
I've heard that's a thing you can do in Utah as well, like Lake Tahoe. You could go like on a lake and then go up the mountain and ski. Lake Tahoe is beautiful. Complete tangent. I haven't spent much time there, but I passed through and I was like, holy crap, this is incredible.
Right on. Yeah, I would. So I guess I've technically been in Ireland, but like I was in the army and we were deploying to the Middle East, but we stopped in Shannon, Ireland. And what I got to see flying in over the ocean was very pretty. But yeah, and I had an Irish coffee while I was there. And then,
yeah,
but we stopped long enough to put gas on the plane and, got right back on. So,
okay. Yeah, that's not very long, huh? I definitely had to have some Guinness while I was there. I'm not a big beer drinker, but I'm not gonna skip that. I gotta have the authentic experience.
Yeah, I tried. I tried to anyway. And I do love that the accent from Ireland is just fantastic.
Me too.
I can't imagine being surrounded by it for a week. Did it like start to become normalized in your brain?
Yeah.
Or was it still magical the whole time?
It was still kind of magical the whole time. Maybe a little bit because we were there 12 days. Maybe a little bit by the end. I'm starting to get used to it. But there's enough variety in the accents. It's not just there's an Irish accent, but there's variety within that accent. So it's pretty cool. Also for me, I mean, it's you cannot tell by my name, obviously, but I am more Irish than any other ethnicity. My mother's maiden name is Ryan. So Pam Ryan. I'm Abishai Aziz Aldori is the son of Pam Ryan.
Right. Well, it is what it is.
Yeah, it is. Right. So I have so there was some sort of like homecoming-ish culturally, family-wise for me because I'm unsurprisingly I have studied my family genealogy because it's a history thing and I want to see like I've looked at
you like history
people in my ancestry and so there was a lot of Ireland and going back there. That's where a lot of the records get kind of lost from that point on, but that's fun. It's fun to look at that stuff.
Right on. I agree. I love history too, and we're going to dig into that here in a second. But we've hit 6 o'clock, so we're going to stop mid-roll, and I'm going to, if I don't remember to plug things, I never remember to plug things. So I try to at the halfway point ish, we stop, and I say first and foremost, thanks to ridiculous Ed Tollett, my top patron. He's probably going to start popping into the chat here in a minute. He always works on Sundays, but he's probably getting off work right about now. But good man.
Good name, too.
Good name, too, right. Also, please go ahead and like the stream. We're having fun. If you're enjoying yourself, leave a like. If you like what you're seeing here and you're not subscribed already, please subscribe. I've got Expanse coverage coming next week. We're going to do 3 episodes at a time. So we're doing the first 3 episode stream in 2 weeks. No. In 1 week.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Related to that. Would you have preferred it to be week to week or be dropped all at once?
I think I would.
Yeah. Same.
Because of the way, that being, having said that, like I'm watching Watchmen, which is the stream after next. And the week-to-week nature of that show, much like the way Game of Thrones was released, it just allows you to, speculate and share ideas and everything. Yeah.
Let it breathe. Think about it. Yeah.
Right. So we're going to
get more engaged with it when you think about it, I think, rather than just move on to the next episode,
So I'm only going to watch 3 episodes at a time.
Oh, okay.
Of The Expanse. So we're watching 3. That's what we're talking about next weekend. The weekend after that, we are going to do like a full review, discussion thing of Watchmen because that show has been amazing. I don't know if you're watching Watchmen.
I am, and so are Lady Gwyn and Yoke Boy. So We're gonna watch the next episode when like a little after this is done.
Yeah, basically probably less than an hour after we finish, Watchmen is coming on, and
it'll line up nicely. And then we're gonna watch Silicon Valley, which is the series finale of that.
I'd never watched that show, but now
that it's over, maybe you'll pick it up.
I've heard good things though.
Yeah, it's very funny. Yeah, it's easier to watch than Watchmen or Game of Thrones or
right. Right. But I like a show that challenges me.
Yeah, me too. It's good to ask. It's kind of why they're back to back. Like it's the same time slot. Game of Thrones. One of the reasons Silicon Valley was really helped out by being launched right after Game of Thrones. So they were like, that's the best time slot. Like everyone's watching Game of Thrones, and then now it's following Watchmen. So it's kind of the same thing. They're like attaching it to a powerhouse thing,
right?
But
I see a lot of people sharing their love of Watchmen in the chat.
Yeah, I do. Wow, yeah, the chat's moving quicker when you mention that.
Well, it's a great show, and it's just I can't recommend it enough. If you're not watching Watchmen, you really should be. Give
it a chance to get going. Like Sean and I were a little like, there's a little too much setup here, but then all of a sudden it's like, whoa,
I'm with you on that.
And then it just as soon as it just goes from setup to very dramatically not set up, and it's amazing. Yeah, it's like wow.
It's one of those shows that like it takes a little while for them to layer it in the way they are.
Yeah,
because I agree. Like the first couple episodes, I wasn't in love with. I was enjoying it.
Yeah,
but I wasn't in love. But then somewhere along the way, maybe episode 4 or 3, the storytelling changed, and it was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. I think it was 5 for me because it was like maybe it was 4 because episode 1 starts off like whoa. And then it does a lot of building. And then episode 2 is a completely different set of building. And then, okay, that's a lot of building. And then episode 3, they bring in a character you haven't seen yet and make the whole episode around her. And you're like, all right, that's more building. It's cool. But like, we probably should start getting to the plotting more. And then, like you said, it sort of episode 4, it starts to happen there. And then episode 5 is just pure gas.
Yeah.
And then 6 and 7 have been pure gas too. And now it's like, so without spoiling anything, I'll say Sean and I watched episode 5, and as you know, there's a cliffhanger at the end of it. I won't say what it was. And we watched episode 6, and we didn't even realize that cliffhanger wasn't resolved. We're like, oh, they didn't resolve. Then they end up resolving it the next episode, and we're like, we're so riveted that we didn't even notice. Yeah, sort of. You're right. Sort of resolved. It's not fully resolved. They didn't even address it. That's what I mean. They didn't even deal with it. They just skipped it and moved to the next episode. It's like, you want to find out what happens at the end of episode 5, you're going to have to skip to episode 7.
Yeah, I think I said this when we were talking about it. I had a birthday stream, and I was talking about it during that. I think the thing I love the most about Watchmen is that you can't predict it. You just cannot predict what's going to happen next. Because your brain can't conceive to predict it's going to rain squid soon.
It's not in the wheelhouse of possibilities.
Right. There. So like, and yes,
squid rain.
Very minor spoiler for those of you who haven't seen it. It does in fact rain squid at some point, so you will know that is coming. But like, that's the type of thing that this show is doing. That just you can't. No, you can't.
Yeah. And it's amazing too, because part of the way it does that is it invents some like strange technological or interesting things that really help the plot, but without being like Deus Ex Machina or anything. Like they just help move the plot. They don't resolve the plot. They push it farther. They're not MacGuffins to like get out of writing themselves into a corner. They're the thing that makes the writing more difficult. It's the complete opposite. It's like, how are we going to write this? This is going to be hard.
I will say, like, the story isn't finished yet. So writing, I don't feel like I can fully judge the writing yet.
Good point. Yeah. It could have a terrible ending for all we know.
Right. I doubt it. It's been killing it up to this point, but the acting, top notch. And also, I'm a very visual storytelling type of person, which is why I watch more TV than I read by a lot. But the cinematography on that show is visionary.
Yes.
Like they're doing things that almost break the rules of TV. Almost.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's true. What is an example of something you think is one of their out of that?
There's a hard cut between the detective's eyes at one point and the roof of a cathedral, and it is flawless. Her face turns into the ceiling of a church.
Oh yeah, that was incredible. That was because usually you do that with like you fade into someone else's eyes. It's not quite as epic or It's like with John, they fade from the baby to John. Like that's the more like what you expect from that. But this was more artistic. Yeah, it was a human face to a black human face, a brown human face to a white cathedral. It was really just.
And her dark eyes becoming the very brightly lit ceiling.
Yeah.
But the way they were shaped was, it's just so good. And like, one of the things that really strikes me is anytime Looking Glass is around, you have to pay attention to what's going on around him because he's reflecting everything. That's his character, Again,
True.
He's not an archetype, but like he is strongly a metaphor because he's Looking Glass. He's reflecting things, He's got a 7 years bad luck line even in there, even. And,
yeah.
Mirror's very tied to his sort of like origin story, but like him being a reflection of modern humanity. And again, we don't know where his story ends yet. We don't even know where he is right now. But yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, let's. There's 2 more episodes, right? A lot of people thought there was 8. I think there's 9, right?
I think there's 9. That's what I've heard. Cool. There's 9.
Yeah,
2 more, which is why we're going to do the week after Watchmen ends is when we'll do the review.
Okay, cool. Right on. Well, I look forward to that.
Oh yeah, we got off on a Watchmen tangent while I was trying to talk about things here in the middle. Not that I regret that in the slightest.
No, that was fun.
One more thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned is, yes, the channel name has changed. I'm sure you've all noticed that that the channel is now Here Be Dragons. I said it before during the birthday stream when I announced everything, but I'll tell you now that Nessie, the Questing Beast, is going to be a recurring co-host on my channel. Right now, she works every other Sunday. What that means, basically every other Sunday, she's going to be here to talk about whatever we're talking about.
Very good.
And anybody who's been showing up for the Expanse streams knows who Nessie is, knows who Questing Beast. She's been in every one of them. We're doing them because she talked me into it, so I made her, I wanted her to come along. But we work really well together, so yeah, we're gonna have a little bit more serious partnership going forward. And my artist has said new channel art, new logo art will be delivered tomorrow. So
very good.
I will be sharing that on Twitter tomorrow. I'll probably put it on my Instagram too, though I don't Insta much, but
that's a good reason to. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good reason to. So yeah, the rebranding is here, and if you're a patron, I am restructuring Patreon. Things are only going to either A, stay the same, or B, get better. So don't worry about losing any benefits. Well, we'll only be adding stuff. All right, that having been said, Aziz.
Yeah.
Back to you.
Cool.
I heard a little bit of a story that you told the other day. And I want to have you repeat that for all the guests here about the Great Escape from Santa Fe.
Okay, so I went to Santa Fe last month, and I just went by myself, and I was there for 4 days. Yeah, 4 days, and at one point, I'm hanging out with one of George's assistants, and we'd gone out to dinner every day, just hanging out, having a good time. And we go over to her house and just watch some TV. And I wasn't really thinking about it at the time, but it dawned on me that once we were inside her house and after like a 30 minutes, we were watching Friends of all things. It was fun. Sitting there, and I'm like, wait a minute. That was a really big gate. And we drove like several hundred yards once we got inside the gate. And this is an apartment complex. So am I on George's property right now? Right. I didn't say that, but I didn't say it like that, but I was like, is this George's land? And she's like, yeah, this is his land. This is his property. I live in, I just live here on this carriage house kind of spot. It's a really nice spot she has. Wow. And I didn't get to see it during the day, but she told me there's like some fruit trees even on the property. It's like 4 acres or something like that. And so, we have a good time, and it's time for me to go eventually. It's, late or whatever. She's getting sleepy, so I'm going back to my Airbnb. And she tells me how to open the gate. And it's dark. I walk out, and I walk towards the gate, and it's a little cold. I'm walking there, and my lift is on the way. It's like 5 minutes away, and I'm like trying to open this gate. I got the flashlight. I'm like trying to do it. It just doesn't work. I look at my phone, 4 minutes, and I'm still trying to do this. 3 minutes. I'm like, shit, I have to still go in 2 minutes. I'm like, oh God, I cannot open this gate. So I had to climb. George's gate. So I may be the first person ever to climb George R. R. Martin's fence to get out.
Right.
Some people may have climbed in, but I climbed out. The next day, she just like gave me a little clicker, so I didn't have to. It was a good story for her too. So
yeah, that's one of those like that's a keeper story, you know.
I definitely went around telling people that right away. I was like, I get this great story. Escape from George R. R. Martin's house.
Right.
But I didn't see like his actual house or inside. I saw it from the outside. I didn't like go in or anything.
Right.
He was not there. He was not there the whole time I was there.
Oh, okay. So you didn't actually meet him in Santa Fe?
No. He was at the cabin.
Oh, he's working.
Which is where he goes to isolate himself to write.
Right.
So that's pretty cool. He was actually right. So that was good news. I'm like, well, he's not here. And I wasn't expecting to see him by being there anyway. There was a chance because being around his assistants who were around him all the time, there's always a chance, but that wasn't super likely. But Santa Fe is great. It's a really nice town. You can see why George loves it. It's a
dry heat.
It's dry heat, and there's just a lot of. I was told that it has one of the highest percentages of restaurants per capita. So it's just an eating out city.
All right.
It also has a lot of galleries of art. There's this quarter-mile stretch in downtown Santa Fe that has the most art galleries of any quarter-mile stretch in the country. And so that's cool because I like looking at art. I mean, I can't afford to buy art gallery stuff, but I can appreciate it.
I wouldn't have thought that, but then you think about, Indian art is actually really big there, and it's really beautiful and very in demand. And Santa Fe is like maybe the heart of that.
Santa Fe is older than the U.S. Yeah, it was founded by the Spanish, so it's like a 400-year-old city. So there's also like statues from that era. Like I took pictures of a cathedral while I was there, a Spanish cathedral, and that was really neat. So that's kind of a different feel to it from most U.S. cities. Is that most U.S. cities are like even Atlanta. I live in Atlanta, and Atlanta's more than 150 years old, but it doesn't feel that way because it was burned in the Civil War, so everything was like new. So Santa Fe is really nice. The food is really good there. Like the scenery's great, and I went to George's bookstore. She took me there, which was that was really cool. He has his theater, John Cocteau Theater. And next to John Cocteau Theater is this bookstore called Beastly Books. And in the long term, George is going to make it a bar. But it takes a while to get that going, to get the license and all that. So right now it has its coffee shop and bookstore. And the bookstore is filled with like some of George's stuff. Like there's a big Iron Giant in there. There's a spacesuit from Night Flyers in there. And there's like a bench, like an iron bench that's wrought Targaryen dragons in it. And the display is like a lot of A Song of Ice and Fire books, obviously, but other books too. And 90% of the books in the store are signed, like including the ones that aren't from George. Wow, so that's because George knows all these people. And so we're in there one day. We go in there twice because one day we just go in there. She shows it to me. And then we come back another day to go to the John Cocteau Theater. And the second day we were there were two people in the store running it. And when we leave, she goes, that was, what's his name? Right, yeah, that was Roger Zelazny's kids. Or those were Roger Zelazny's kids. I was like, what? Cool. And one of them was named Corwin. So, of course, Corwin was the main character of Nine Princes in Amber or whatever. And so the bookstore was really cool. And then on Friday, we go to this John Cocteau Theater. They had a comedy show. And this is a really funny idea for a comedy show. First of all, it's decorated with art. There's more of George's books are there. There's just another row of signed books just kind of sitting there in the theater. And there's all of this beautiful art. It's a really nice, small art theater. The capacity is like 120 people. But we go to the show, which is 12 comedians, 11 of whom are high. And the audience has to guess which of the comedians is sober.
That's fantastic.
It was very fun, and we did it. No thanks to me. I kept guessing the wrong person. But it was they do it apparently they do it once a month. It wasn't like they were like, this time you guys got it. We're like, oh, this time. Apparently this is a recurring thing. And so that was fun. Yeah. There were some of them were just so obvious. One guy's like, because the way that you would figure it out is like, they would ask a question to each one of the 12, and the way they judge based on the way they answer is like, what would you do with $1 million? And the one guy's just like, apples, apple cider, apple, and of course there's always a chance he's just pretending to be high, right. But like, you're like, okay, that guy's high.
Awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun. So what brought you to Santa Fe then?
In Ireland, we had all that time there, and I just made friends with Sid. That's the assistant that I hung out with. We were just kind of buddied up and spent a good bit of time there hanging out and chatting. And she suggested visiting, and so like a couple times. And then we, after leaving Ireland, we stayed in touch, and she mentioned it one or two other times. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go there. I'm going to definitely go to Santa Fe. That sounds fun. So yeah, like you have pretty much just that. I've been trying to travel a little more and visit friends more often. That's why I'm here in Boston too. And Boston is really cheap to fly to. So this worked out really well. But
been jet setting this year, man.
No, more flying. I've done more flying this year than I've done the last 3 years put together, probably. But part of that is learning a trick Ashea showed me, which is use Google Flights to monitor flight prices. It'll give you like a chart that shows the history of the price of this flight that you're trying to monitor. And so if you want to go somewhere and have flexible time, you just punch it in and say, hey, Google, like keep track of flights to Las Vegas. And it'll give you alerts and say, hey, that ticket price is $90 now. So when it's at its lowest point, you can really have a chance to grab it at that low point. And that's the secret. And then it's all about, like, if you're going to visit a friend, then you're less likely to have to, pay for a hotel or whatever. Like I did stay in Airbnb at Santa Fe, but it was really cheap. And Sid had, like, she was working part of the time, so it just made sense. And also, but here I get to stay with Lady Gwen and Yoke Boy, and that's awesome. And so it's pretty cheap for traveling.
So how's Boston been while you're there? You said it's snowing pretty good, huh?
Yeah, if it weren't dark, I would stick my webcam out the window. It is.
Oh yeah,
frozen.
I'm sure
it is frozen here, y'all.
I'm an hour behind, and it's well and truly dark outside right now. So
they have layers of snow on the side of the roof that's like above the windowsill like this, and there's a frozen pool out there, and
oh wow,
it is cold.
Yeah,
I mean it's fine inside, but yeah.
I know you're from Atlanta. The climate in Atlanta is pretty similar to the climate in Dallas.
Yeah,
snow.
I haven't seen snow in 2 years until today, I think.
Yeah. If it snowed like you're describing in Dallas, like they would turn off the state.
Reboot.
And people would probably start declaring the end times. We're near.
Sounds about right.
We do not do snow here very well in Texas. Not at all.
Not in Atlanta either. The city does not know how to handle it.
Danny McKay had a great question for you, by the way.
All right.
On Twitter, he said, George R.R. Martin answered Ashea's question about Bloodraven and Dark Sister. Were you surprised when he answered, and do you think the sword has a cameo in The Winds of Winter? And also says he's really enjoying Valerie Reedus.
Oh, great. Well, thank you, Danny. That is a good question. Yeah, I'm enjoying Valerie Reedus too. I mean, I thought I didn't realize how much I would be learning, but that's the common refrain when talking about digging into A Song of Ice and Fire, isn't it? But yeah, to answer the question, well, if you listen to the recording of Ashea asking that question, you hear me go, whoa, when he said yes. So that response from me was definitely full of surprise. Right. Not that the answer was yes necessarily, but that he answered. We thought that morning we had the inspiration for that question because we knew we'd be getting a Q&A shot. We had a decent chance of getting a question answered because not every question gets answered. But we have done enough of these. We've been to a lot of his Q&As. I mean, by a lot, I mean like 6 or 7. So we've developed a strategy. We've seen what questions can get asked. We've seen what kind of questions he won't answer. And so we kind of have a sense for where that middle ground is. You can get right up to where he might answer, where he won't say keep reading or something like that, where he might actually answer. So a lot of these are sometimes they're semi-obscure history questions like that one. But we were really happy with that question because it like Danny indicates, it might be not just a historical thing. Dark Sister might very well appear. I do think it will. The fact that he was like confidently, yes, Bloodraven took it with him. We know Bloodraven's got lost beyond the wall. That sword's almost certainly in Bloodraven's cave. And if it winds up with, could eventually end up in Arya's hands. And ever since that sword was first named, people started thinking of Arya, just because Dark Sister. The name is like, yep.
Right.
It was obviously more named after Visenya, even though, well, not really, even because it probably wasn't made for her. It was probably forged long before that, but it fit her, the name. And yeah, so it fits Arya super well. And I could see her getting it and doing cool things with it. Like one of my newest pet tinfoil theories is that she kills Varys. Because I think Varys' death will be a lot different in the books.
You think Arya's going to kill Varys?
Well, see, here's the thing. I don't know that she'll kill Varys, but I'm very confident that she'll go back into those tunnels. I'll tell you why. Okay, so she goes in the tunnels. Why does she go into the tunnels? Who leads her into the tunnels?
She's chasing a cat. Yeah.
Right. And down there, she sees Varys and Illyrio and hears all this stuff. Varys is a mummer. He's an expert at disguise, right? Now Arya is probably going to be better than him at that, which is just kind of an idea to relate the two of them, not necessarily doesn't necessarily push the theory any farther. Okay, so what does Arya do down in the tunnel? She finds her way out eventually, and as she's feeling her way along the wall, she's scared, but she's starting to get more confident as she goes. In A Feast for Crows, she loses her eyesight. And what does she do at the end of that chapter? She looks through the eyes of a cat to find her way. So, and what happens when she leaves the tunnels? She comes back to the Red Keep. She's all dirty and disheveled. She sees the guards, and the guards are like, "You're not getting in here. You don't belong in here. Get the hell out of here." And she goes, "I want to see my father." And he goes, "Who's your father? The city rat catcher?" Why does that matter? Because Blood and Cheese were the two that snuck into the tunnels and did that awful thing during the Dance of the Dragons where they killed one of the sons of Aegon II in front of his wife, and the other one was traumatized, and the mother was traumatized. And that was the end of rat catchers. Rat catchers were replaced by cats after that. And so George wrote this connection of rat catcher to Arya in one of her earliest chapters. And so I just love the idea that she'll be able to go back in those tunnels and use a cat to find her way.
Oh yeah,
she can see through cats' eyes now. She's shown that she can skin change into a cat, and I think the purpose of that wasn't just to see the kindly man and what he was doing. I think it's going to go beyond that. She's going to look through a cat's eyes again. Yeah, and that could be it. So the other person she could go after is Cersei. On the other hand, Cersei probably won't be there because of Fagon. So that's why I say Varys, because Varys is the only person I could think of that she would go for in there. And the reason she would kill Varys is because he's aligned against someone she's for, like Jon, or that she finds out about the child slaves, the tongues, and all that. So
right on. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. What was that name you said?
Which name?
Cersei's not going to be there because of who?
Fagon.
I don't know who that is.
Young Griff.
Oh, you mean Aegon VI, the one true king of Westeros?
yes, of course. You don't recognize that title.
Right.
You've heard that phrase, but you don't recognize
no. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So that's that person. Yeah. So maybe Arya will kill him. I kind of doubt it. Would be
interesting. I doubt it too. I do love to yank people's chains. I don't know that I think he's actually Aegon Targaryen, but to me, I love that character.
As sold on the Blackfire thing.
I'm not as sold on the Blackfire thing, although it is entirely possible.
Yeah. So we'll have to see about that theory, that Arya stuff. But I think it's interesting. The kind of thing, because she's always been the character that's kind of hardest to figure because she's the most detached from the rest of the story. And you will like she's off doing this thing in the House of Black and White, and you're like, it's not the House of Black and White isn't directly connected to anyone else, and who is she going to come kill? Like, I don't know, because it's not going to be like the way the show had, where she only kills Walder Frey and the rest of the Freys, and then never really uses her face stuff again. Like, I don't know about that. He hardly uses anything other than her fighting skills, which she uses a lot, but she doesn't use her sneakiness. She doesn't use, in the show, that is. So I expect, she does use her sneakiness in that one scene with the end in the library. But you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot more room for Arya to do her thing than what the show had time for.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to think that there almost has to be more use for her sort of like faceless man skills in the books. Why give her the ability to see through a cat's eyes just so she can like have that kind of cool moment where she blocks this, where she knows who's hitting her with the stick and stuff,
Yeah. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention, the other thing that wraps up that the show clue that Arya will get Dark Sister is that Bran gives her the cat's paw dagger, which is maybe the rough equivalent, because Bran would be in the cave and he could find Dark Sister, or maybe it's Mira that takes, because Mira could actually use it. Although she doesn't fight with a sword, she probably could. I mean, in a pinch, I'm sure she's capable of using that instead of her frog spear. It is Valyrian steel after all.
Right, exactly. I mean, if I have an iron-tipped spear and a Valyrian steel sword, I mean, yeah, okay.
Even if you're better with the spear, you might, let's use this.
It might depend on who I'm fighting too, but like Valyrian steel is going to go through regular, even Castle Forge steel pretty easily, I would imagine. It's going to find.
I agree.
So it might be more effective than a spear, just no matter what, against an armored opponent at least.
Especially if it's the undead too, right? You clearly want to use the Valyrian steel against the undead.
Right on.
So yeah, that's my latest thoughts on Arya from Valar Reread. That's not a theory that I had until rereading her tunnel scenes and thinking about all the things we've learned. Because like Danny's question, this Dark Sister thing, we learned that last year. We didn't know to apply that. Not that the Dark Sister part is a big part of Arya going into the tunnels, but it's part of it, a little bit. Some of the other evidence I think is more directly related to it, but
yeah, I mean, I think George does a lot of like parallels. I mean, look who I'm telling, the guy who came up with the Parallel Lives game. George writes, but I think he writes in a lot of parallels, and maybe not as many as some people think he does. People.
Some of them are surely accidental.
I mean, he's done a lot of layering, which leads to people sometimes seeing more layers than are actually there.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure there's a few things where he wrote it to be kind of simple, and people took it in a way that made it not simple. And he was like, "What do you mean? I just."
Right.
No, really, Jaime and Cersei are.
So, do you think there's an Oscar Tully?
Well, we got the there is an Oscar Tully. He's in Fire and Blood.
Is there? I thought they were Kermit, Elmo, and Grover.
Kermit, Elmo, and Grover were in the World of Ice and Fire, and the Fire and Blood added Oscar to the mix. Nice. He's like the next generation. I forgot. One down, yeah.
I thought I was making a clever joke, but So I do have another question for you, though.
Sure.
You helped write this book right here.
I did. The Thrones Effect. Yes, that was fun.
Matter of fact, yours is the first name written on contributors right there.
Well, that might be alphabet.
It probably is
thing, but still, which, by the way, is a real thing. Alphabetism. Don't ever let anyone tell you that alphabetism isn't a real thing.
Right.
I have in the initials AAA, and I have noticed throughout my life that it has been a big benefit.
I was going to say Abishai, and the only guy that comes ahead of you in line is Aaron.
Yeah, exactly. Stupid Aarons. That's my least favorite name.
Hard people, but I suppose that might as well. But so, can you tell a little bit about writing your chapter?
Yeah. So this is the second book project we've done. The first one was called A Dream of Spring, and it was some of the Tower of the Hand guys, and we wrote an essay on Harrenhal, and that was really fun. But this was a higher profile project, and of course, it was a lot more recent. And it involves mostly, whereas the other was mostly podcasters and like website runners and some bloggers, this was mostly YouTubers. So it's kind of a little bit of a different batch. Not all YouTubers, but mostly YouTubers. And of course, we're more pod than YouTube. We're both, but still, whatever, small difference. And it was mostly it came about through Game of Thrones Academy. If you all are familiar with them, they have a very fine show as well, and they have some connections in the publishing industry, so it's kind of a natural fit for them to find some people who wanted to contribute, and they recruited a bunch of us. And Gil
is he's in the academic community, is that right?
Yes.
Is that why he is? Which is why he has connections to publishers and things like that.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't actually click in my head, but you're right. That's got to be it. So he had recruited some people, and I think it was who recruited me. It might have been Smokescreen, or no, I think a couple of them. They were talking amongst themselves to ask who else to invite, and I think our names were thrown out there, and so they invited us. And so both of us, me and Shea, and they asked, okay, so here's some ideas. What chapter do you want to write? And so we came up with some ideas. We gave like pretty substantial list, like 8 things, and we sent it to them, and they were like, "Oh, these are good ideas, but they're all taken." So we're like, "What? All of these ideas are taken? Damn it!" So we came up with the idea to do Game of Thrones, kind of a meta on Game of Thrones, how much it's popped out in society with things that have nothing to do with Game of Thrones. So our chapter, one subtopic is people naming their kids and pets after Game of Thrones characters. And we looked up like stats on this,
right?
Like the popularity of the name Arya before and after the book, before and after Game of Thrones, and then the show, and things like the name Khaleesi being given to kids, which is like what, and like Cersei and dogs named Greywind and Ghost, which there were people probably naming their pets Ghost before, and certainly Lady, but Greywind, that's very Game of Thrones specific,
right?
And, so even Summer, you could see someone naming their dog Summer and not having to do with Game of Thrones, but Greywind, and Shaggy Dog also. That's like, all right, that's
right. I can see all of it. I'm sure Nymeria saw a surge too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the other one. There's no chance that's not a Game of Thrones one.
Right.
So
zero chance.
Yeah, 0, absolute 0. Even Greywind, there's a tiny chance it's not Game of Thrones related, but Nymeria, no. So we also found things like police stuff. Like there was a San Francisco task force was formed to take on Vietnamese street gangs, and it was called Operation Gang of Thrones.
Nice.
So I just ran, and then we went through like a list of TV shows and movies that had references, and we couldn't do them all. It was too long.
There's a million. My favorite. Do you have a favorite?
Oh God. Maybe okay. A couple that come to mind are the name of the daughter character on Kimmy Schmidt, who is Antigone. No, it's like Antigone Voorhees Lannister, or Antigone Lannister Voorhees, or something like that.
Okay.
And then my other one is the recurring ones on Parks and Rec, like when Ben is given the Iron Throne, and when Ben is also knighted by that goofy British lord that Andy became best friends with or whatever, and he's like, "You want me to knight you?" And he's like, "Oh no, I couldn't. No, really, it's nothing. I've knighted people all the time." He's like, "Oh, winter has come for Sir Ben Lightstorm." What about yours? What are some of your favorites?
Okay, I'll throw out 2 examples as well. I don't watch all of Supernatural, but I watched some of it. And there was an episode where one of the brothers was watching TV and with Felicia Day sitting next to him, and he turns off the TV and he goes, "Well, that Joffrey is a dick." And I'm just like, that's so good, perfect. Yeah. And then if you haven't seen, what's that show called? Cobra Kai.
I've not. I've heard it's good though.
It is actually very good, and but there's a couple of references in there where a couple of characters bond over their shared love of Game of Thrones, and like literally is using it to, we shouldn't trust these people, and like, what if Jon didn't trust the wildlings and let them beyond the wall? He couldn't have won the Battle of the Bastards. And I'm just like, yeah, this show, the creators of this show at least know their GOT lore pretty well.
That's good. I love it.
But they do seem to pop up everywhere.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's you can find YouTube videos that just have compilations of clips. We found one that was 20 minutes of Game of Thrones references in non-Game of Thrones shows, everything from Simpsons to like all sorts of different TV shows and movies and news clips, sports clips of people just randomly mentioning a Game of Thrones reference while someone's scoring a goal or something. Just everywhere. It's pretty cool. It's nice to be in a fandom that's big like that.
It is.
Also has a nice community that isn't, overwhelming and full of people who aren't really bought in and engaged. So
right.
Somehow we get both. I don't know how. We're lucky.
I have said it before. Game of Thrones, well, A Song of Ice and Fire, and by extension, Game of Thrones, and whatever, has changed my life. And yours probably even more so than mine.
Yeah, I would think so.
But like my circle of friends, I have about 2 or 3 people that I hang out with in the flesh and blood. But all of my friends are the people in the chat right now, or the people I talk to on Twitter, and that popped up through the A Song of Ice and Fire fandom, to a lesser degree the show fandom, but like most of my close friends are book first people, and I think it says something about the nature of the story and the storytelling and the characterizations that George does that leads a certain type of person to want to be a super fan of this particular story.
Yeah, that is very true. I think you're right, because it's not just, something basic like everyone loves chocolate. The reasons to love Game of Thrones are a lot more diverse, I suppose you could say. But yet we tend to love it for lots of reasons, and there's going to be overlap. Like if we were each to make a list of our 10 favorite things about A Song of Ice and Fire, these lists would be very different because there's so many things to think about or pick out. You could name your favorite character if you want, or you could name the way it's written, or you could just name the community. You could just like things that don't even have to do with the actual books itself. You could talk about, the meta things. So, but even that said, if we were all make these lists, like all you, me, everybody in the chat, there would be so much overlap, even though there's such a huge diversity of options to choose from.
Yeah, like the things that attract me to it, like maybe my list looks different, but you're probably right. I bet there's 7 out of the 10 points that we would each pick that would be the same, maybe not in the same order.
Or similar, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a wonderful thing that we get kind of the best of both worlds. We get the popularity and we get the, that feel of a smaller community that's really engaged, and you really got to know your stuff to get far in that.
Right. Well, and that having been said, like I've watched a lot of A Song of Ice and Fire content over the past several years,
Yeah.
But I always come back to, who you're still my number one. My favorite podcast is still History of Westeros.
Thanks.
And I've really enjoyed that you guys have sort of like stepped up your content creation in the back half of the year with Valerie Reedus. I don't get to make it to them all, especially since it's on the same day that I stream.
Yeah, that's understandable.
But and occasionally a nap on a Sunday afternoon is a fantastic thing. Let's just have that said.
That is true.
That is very true. Yeah, like the level of research, care that goes into every episode you make is just astounding.
I want to do good. I want to do good for y'all. It's a good community. I want to, I have that. It's that motivation where you don't want to let people down. And I feel like if I'm not doing, it's routine that before Valerie Reedus, I'm going through Facebook or Flick and trying to find everything, make sure I got everything everybody said. Like today, I missed someone's comment on Patreon and I snuck it in near the end, and I felt kind of bad about that, but at least I got it in there a little bit. Right. And we all know the basis of A Song of Ice, the fact that so many people could talk about it without repeating each other, or with only repeating each other a little bit, with only a little bit of overlap, is an indication that there's always so much more to go. So I'm always telling myself, there's got to be some things I've missed. So I never can sit back and say, oh, I got it all.
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's ridiculous. That's utterly ridiculous. So that's one of the challenges, to try to find a happy medium between, stop thinking about A Song of Ice and Fire for a minute or two every once in a while. But I don't really.
Yeah, I know you don't.
I go to sleep thinking about it, and it's part of why I travel, because if I work at home, I've realized this is a thing, is work and non-work life separation is a thing that is important to a lot of people. And for me, I have no line. It's a extremely blurry line, if there is even a line there, because I love A Song of Ice and Fire and I work in it. So I don't know, how do I divide that? How do I split that? So that's part of why I've been traveling more, is to be in a spot where I'm definitely not in my own house, where I feel like, hey, I could be working right now. Because I'll be in another room doing something and I'm like, I could be working, I could be doing research right now, or I could be reading more. I could be reading this chapter a third time or a fourth time or listening to it, or I could be listening to it while I'm doing this other thing. So I'm constantly like a voice being like, you could do a little more here. You could do a little more. And that adds up over a long time. And
yeah, I think I'm with you. That's one of the things for my work. Like when I walk in to clock in to work, I leave everything else outside. I'm a professional. I do the job. When I clock out and leave, man, don't ask me nothing about work. I don't want anything to do with it. And it's made me a much happier person.
Yeah, I haven't experienced that in a long time. But of course, my work is not very stressful. And it's
you are self-employed, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and that has its own bits of stresses. Like, obviously, I don't have great insurance. I don't even have good insurance. But I get to set my own hours. That's really nice. And no one's telling me what to do. That's obviously nice. But I do have responsibilities and duties that recur no matter whether I want to do them or not. Like once you set out a certain path for yourself and you made that public, you got to do it, or either your reputation and people's trust in you will decline. And as it should. If you don't keep your word, people should not trust your word as much. That's pretty straightforward. And I'm bad with like deadlines and things like that, but I think I could be better with that, but that's not as bad as just, completely failing to do what you said you'd do.
Well, you are a model of success on how to run a good community focused. History of Westeros. It's a pretty narrow sort of like niche, I would imagine. It's pretty
it felt narrow.
But like, I think maybe your dedication to that narrow focus has made you like the foremost expert on said topic.
It's worked out better than I could have thought, because now we're getting a prequel show that's just like right in our wheelhouse. Like House of the Dragon is like, thank you.
Right. Right. I'm looking forward to that show coming out just so I can watch your recap streams. That's because I know you're going to have them.
Oh yeah. We might do it like we did last time with 3 a week or something like that. We'll see. Sean will be living in Atlanta when we move around, but we can still. That doesn't mean we can't.
Oh yeah, well. But that's all for the good for Sean.
Yes, it is. Yes, because Sean is getting married to Rita. Another wonderful thing about the community: Sean and Rita met through the podcast.
Right.
So that's and Lady Gwen and Yoke Boy met through Westeros.org.
Yep.
Boom.
And are happily married for maybe a year now.
Something like that. Around that, yeah.
I should ask them, not you.
Yeah, exactly.
But
go to the source.
Yeah, like again. All of my close friends are from the A Song of Ice and Fire fandom.
Yeah, that's very true. And that's yet another reason I've been traveling more, is that my own kind of circle in Atlanta has frittered away over time with marriages and kids and people getting jobs out of town. And over time, the A Song of Ice and Fire community has become more and more it's already been huge for a long time, but it just every year goes by, I'm more and more part of it, and more friends. I know all the people more better, so it's even that's wonderful. But there's not that many of them living in Atlanta, especially in my suburb of Roswell.
Yeah, I don't really have anybody local either that's a super fan the same way. There's a couple people in Austin, there's a couple people in Houston that I know. But not so much Dallas. And even if you're talking Austin and Houston, there's only a few each. But
yeah, and that's one thing that's kind of nice too about the world that we're in now, is we can use these Facebook groups and Twitter and the cons to realize that to find those other friends occasionally, because we do have a few, and each of us have maybe a few around us. Some there's some exceptions, but but that helps. That's how we find each other, because how else would we? Yeah,
exactly. And speaking of the cons, that was the first place I ever met you, was Nashville in 2017.
Opryland.
Yep. And of course I knew who you were, and we had been interacting, probably in the chat sections of some of your early streams.
Yeah.
But like, and for those of you that have never been to a convention, just go to one.
Yeah,
pick one that
you can make it happen. You should. It's worth it.
Pick one that focuses on a fandom you really care about, even if it's not A Song of Ice and Fire, and go to that convention. It'll change your life. It really will.
And I don't mean like maybe not one of the really huge ones. I don't mean like a Comic Con or even a Dragon Con. I love Dragon Con. I mean a smaller one that's like single-digit thousands, preferably even less than that. But the number of people who say, "I've found my people after going to something like that it's just I've heard that so many times, and every time I'm next to my heart.
I've said that personally, you know.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I heard you say that, like, in person.
Yep. Oh, River, Missouri,
me too.
Never been to a con, and I'm telling you, when I tell you it's going to change your life, it's not like it was the most fun I ever had. It was, but like it's on a different level. It was almost like, you know, I'm a nerd. I grew up a nerd in the 80s. You know, I've been pushed into lockers and, you know, swirlies and stuff when I was a kid. I was that guy, you know, which, you know, and most people who are regulars on the channel know that I do suffer from some degree of social anxiety disorder. It's part of why I do the live streams, to help with that. But no, the sense of belonging at a con is just, you cannot describe it. You can't.
Yeah, a couple of things I've heard, like the phrases that seem to really express it succinctly, are like, it's a place where introverted people go to be extroverted, or it's like a place that a lot of people who are not normally super comfortable socializing, obviously you like realize, I didn't realize socializing could be this fun. I thought it was a chore. I thought it was an energy drain. Wow, I don't want to go home. I don't want to go back to my house and be by myself. I want more of this. This is different. And it's like, you didn't know necessarily that it was even possible to feel like that. And that's awesome. Hey, Sam of the Rainbow Guard.
Sam of the Rainbow Guard. First con this year, changed your life. See, exactly. There you go.
There you go. Perfect.
By the way, nice to see you, Sam. glad you could make it to the stream.
Yeah, Sam received a ticket from us. We gave away a free ticket to Ball at the Wall, and she was the winner.
Nice.
Yeah.
I would love to have gone to Ball at the Wall, but you know, I can't afford
it was hard to go. Yeah. I mean, it was expensive. I mean, it wasn't expensive for us because we got to drive there. It's 3 hours, and of course we didn't have to buy a ticket because we were guests. But still, it was a little bit. It was a level up because they expected, it was required that you dress up, and that's, you know, that implies more expense unless you already have costumes ready. I didn't, so I had to do something. And Shea did Melisandre for the first time. She loved that.
She looked great as Mel, too.
Yeah, it was a really good one. And she basically said, I'm going to finally be the thing that I'm most like already, that everyone is asking me to dress up as. Like, well, there's a reason they ask you to dress up that way. Yep. And so, yeah, that was really fun, too. But that's a good example of something that came. Ball at the Wall was an event that emerged from the fan community. The people went to Con of Thrones and were like, we can't do that, but we could do something small scale. And it was at the Opryland, so yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could have gone, but again, Nashville is a long way from Dallas, and plane tickets are expensive, and it just is what it is. I'm making it to 2 cons next year, fingers crossed.
Hell yeah.
So
Ice and Fire Con of Thrones, you know, if you can only go to 2, those are probably
the 2. Yeah. And it'll be my first Ice and Fire Con. It'll be my the 4th year for Con of Thrones? Yeah. And I'm starting to approach Aziz levels of panels.
That's a good thing to be.
I think I have 7 that I'm maybe on. But
for next year?
Yeah.
Nice.
Like 7 that I'm going to be at least pitching, or somebody has asked me to join them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Once you get in farther, right? You guys had a really good Northern panel last year.
Yeah. Thanks.
What was it called? I forget the exact name of it.
It was Northern Justice and Guest Right.
Right. Northern Justice. That was really good.
I enjoyed it immensely, but I was, you know, there were 6 of us on that panel, and I was the 7th most qualified to be there. At least if in my personal opinion. Great panel. I believe Shakes of Thrones has it up on her channel, the audio, if anybody's interested. It was my favorite panel I've done so far.
I didn't realize the audio was. No, actually, I think I did. I think I remember that when it was going around on Twitter. But yeah, that was really good.
Do you have a favorite panel you've ever done, or have you just done too many to even be able to think about it?
Let me think about it for a second. See if something comes to mind. But
sure,
probably not.
I'm also gonna throw to the chat real quick. We've been going for about an hour and 40, and I don't like to keep my guests too long. And Aziz is a guest in someone else's home right now, and I don't want to keep him from his time with them too much. So if you've got questions for Aziz, go ahead and make sure you tag me so I can find it really super easy, and shoot that question out. And I'm going to ask you one last question then, Aziz.
Okay.
Since you didn't have a good answer for I knew you probably couldn't pick a panel, but let me ask you this then. Do you have a favorite tinfoil theory that you are certain is not true?
Actually, that's a really good question, because the first time, Dragon Con is my hometown con, and it doesn't have a whole lot of Game of Thrones presence, but it is huge. And some of the Ice and Fire Con people, and including Tara and Chloe from Girls Gone Canon, and some other folks, do have a recurring panel at Dragon Con they've done the last few years called Looney Theories panel. And I was just there to support them. I was in line with Shea and other people were there. We were friends, and I wanted to go to the panel. It was fun the year before. And Tara walks by and says, "Hey, Aziz."
Is that Tara Lynn?
Yeah, Tara Lynn, who was the main person behind Ice and Fire Con. She's also runs the Geekiary. That's her site. And she says, "Hey, Aziz, Chloe is sick. She can't be on the panel. Any chance you want to jump in?" It was 9:45. The panel started at 10. But randomly, we had been discussing some Looney Theories on the way down, because I knew I was going to this panel, so we were kind of joking about some of the ones that I'd heard at Con of Thrones. Because the panel that Kim and Bookshelf Stud and Joe Magician and
great panel, by the way. The
who did I forget? There's more people on there.
I don't remember.
Laura Brandos was on there, and and I think one other person, but I forget. Anyway, it was. I went to that panel and I just borrowed one of those Looney Theories, the favorite, the one that I thought was the funniest out of those, and I borrowed it to use because I was like, I need something. I've got 15 minutes. I got to come up with something. So I was like, I just borrowed the what I heard from them about the dragon poop theory, which was the idea that dragon glass is dragon poop.
Okay.
And it's really funny because you can't say it's not true. Sure, you can mine it you can mine obsidian in caves, but that doesn't mean that it can't also come from a dragon's butt.
You're right. It does not. The two are not necessarily mutually exclusive.
And if you really dig into this theory, which you shouldn't, but if you really dig into this theory, I mean, think about it. Dragons are huge, and think about how much they eat. They're going to be dropping some substantial loads. So
yes,
better if it's usable.
Although actually, I think that has been totally refuted because of a certain scene in Fire and Blood. Where there is literally a pile of dragon shit that somebody gets pushed into.
That's a good point.
So
maybe it needs time to harden, like werewood.
Right. Okay, that's what it is. When it cools, it cools into dragon glass.
We'll come up with a reason to save this theory.
Right. It's worth saving. I agree. It's worth saving. Okay. Yeah. Well, Honor is a Horse has a good question. Who is a new theorist that Aziz would endorse or secretly support?
Okay, I have two names that I'll throw out. And by new, I mean within the last, like they didn't have a YouTube channel 3 years ago or even 2 years ago. So I'll suggest two people. One is Joe Magician, who I've already mentioned, and he has a different way of thinking about some of these things. And, you know, like a lot of people who do theories, it's the nature of theories. This is not an insult to any person who spends a lot of time making theories. The nature of theories that most of them are going to be wrong, right? That's just the nature of them, right? Especially if you're at this stage, 2019, when most of the theories, the obvious theories, have all been kind of settled.
Right.
So he has several theories that I had not heard before that I really like. My favorite of his theories is the idea that guys like Aerion Brightflame and Aerys Targaryen were having dreams of Dany. And that's why they tried to emulate what they were seeing. She's the one who got it right. They were thinking it was them, but it was her. They were dreaming. All these characters through the ages were dreaming of the event that happened to her, because so many of them were thinking of fire and blowing everything up. Especially Aerys thought he could blow up King's Landing and turn into a dragon, which thinking of the funeral pyre. So that was in fact, there's a stream out there somewhere where he's introducing that theory. And at one point I'm just like, no. All the dragon dreams are this. And then he starts to explain it. And then like 5 minutes later, I'm like,
all the dragon dreams are this.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Yeah. Actually, I have to take back my objections.
I'm going to throw my support behind Joe Magician too. Like, I don't do a lot of stuff on Patreon, but I am like, there's a couple of people who I will continuously support on Patreon. History of Westeros being one. Like the top notch number 2 spot is Joe Magician. I've also done an I Know That Nerd with Joe Magician. It's in the archives. Go back and check that out if you want. And I heartily agree. He is a fantastic content creator and is doing lots of things to help build the community as well.
Agreed. Yeah, he works for Watchers. Writes for Watchers on the Wall, so he's got some chops and So, but he didn't, like I said, he didn't have a channel 2 years ago or about 2 years ago. He launched. I don't remember, but
I think he launched it after. Like he got serious about it anyway after Con of Thrones in Dallas.
Okay, so he might have had a little presence, but he got technically maybe older than 2 years, but whatever. Yeah, so same basic difference there. And so the other person I want to mention is Crowfoot's daughter. And you knew I was going to do that, didn't you? Yeah, because she's had a lot of great theories. She digs into history stuff really well. She has a wonderful theory about the Valyrian roads. Which you can read, you can check her out on that one. But the one that I'll mention more specifically is she has a great set of ideas on Baelor the Blessed's visions and how there's a lot of different interpretations of hers that I like versus like what kind of dreams he was having and why that led him to do some of the things he did. And there's some really good ideas there that I did not consider. And so I won't spoil them. Let Amanda explain her own theories to you.
She's brilliant, y'all. Yeah, she's brilliant, and she's. And I'm going to throw my support behind Amanda as well. She used to have a Patreon. She's turned it off because her husband is military and he's deployed right now, so she just doesn't have time because of being a mother to 3 children by herself right now. But she is incredible. I've done an I Know That Nerd with her. It's in the archives. Go back and watch that if you want.
You don't want to mess with her either.
No, you do not. I mean, I want to mess with her, but I know I'm going to lose. But it's fun. She will foam sword kick your butt. Not kidding. Yeah, yes, she really will.
She's legit.
Speaking
of legit, I'm gonna you and there's a party. A bunch of us were at a Con of Thrones, and Steven and Amanda had this dance.
Yeah, we did dance.
We were all like, "Well, look at them! They're doing steps and everything. It's like this is organized and wow." Where'd that come from?
I felt like it was actually not that great, but we both at least do know how to dance at least somewhat.
So everyone had been drinking, so the bar was
right. But that was a good night. That was a good night. Amanda's great. If you haven't checked her out, go watch that. Matter of fact, there was a sort of like a thing going around Twitter where somebody said tag 2 people who make this place whose clean decency makes this place actually better. And my 2 tags were Joe Magician and Crowfoot's daughter.
There you go.
And you're like, so part of the question was asking me to recommend. Sorry, Aziz took both of them. Both of them.
I figured at least one of those would be an overlap, but yeah. It's interesting too because it's fun. It's fun. That question is difficult. You could think that it would be difficult because new theorists is kind of like, well, how is there still room for that? Well, there clearly is though, because these 2 are doing it, and other people are out there doing it too. And
to be clear, Amanda's channel is The Disputed Lands.
Yeah, she calls herself Crowfoot's daughter.
But if you want to subscribe to Joe Magician, his channel is Joe Magician.
Yeah.
If you want to subscribe to Crowfoot's daughter, her channel is The Disputed Lands.
We have not managed to have Amanda on. It's just like you said, her schedule's difficult. But we've had Joe Magician on our show a few times, and we'll surely have him again.
I'm sure you will. He's a great guy. All right. Any other questions for Aziz? I didn't see any, but you're very engaging, Aziz. So sometimes I lose myself in what you're saying. I've heard you said this about Miltos.
Yeah.
Yourself. Blue?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That reference is from, we interviewed Miltos at Con of Thrones, me and Ashea and Sean, And we do the thing we always do, which is research. We looked at other interviews he's had and the kind of got a feel for what questions he likes, what kind of questions he responds to, or what kind of questions he's not so into. Also, any question he's been asked a million times, we're going to try to not repeat. But it was clear from the interviews that all you had to do is just get him going. So my joke was just say it, name a color, and he'll talk for several minutes, and it'll be interesting. So,
well, you've kind of got that. You've kind of got that thing going yourself, man. It's a great interview where I can ask a question and you can answer it for 5 minutes. Makes my job super easy. Super easy.
Probably why I got into podcasting. This dude has too much to say. Give him a microphone and a recorder.
And Thank you to the mods. They're dropping links to Joe Magician and Amanda in the chat. Appreciate you guys.
Great. Yeah, right on.
Definitely worth checking out, both of them. So Aziz, we are 10 minutes from 2 hours.
Okay.
So I guess we're going to start. Oh, wait a minute. For Aziz, will we see Howland Reed in the next 2 books?
Yes, I think so. I think that... I don't. Maybe I'm remembering wrong, but George may have even confirmed that we're going to see him.
That would be awesome.
I'll have to look that up. I think yes, and it may be that my opinion doesn't matter, because if George has said yes, then who cares what I think? It's George has said yes, that's it. But and of course he could change his mind. But I'll have to look that up. But I'm pretty sure he said that we would see him, and I think it's the Winds of Winter. But and there's a lot of reason to suspect that, which is because if Mira and Bran cross back to the other side of the wall, she's going to want to reconnect with her father. And there's, stories he knows, there's corroboration. The fact that he's the one that heard about Bran's dream and sent his kids to go be with Bran is that dude knows more than just the Tower of Joy stuff.
You have to.
Yeah.
He's got some of the old magic, I think. Got some of the old magic. Thanks for the question, Morley. It's a good one.
That's a good one. Mara, I love Mara. Mara and I talk a lot, and she and I swap cat photos quite a bit.
Right on.
Has been extra fun this week because Radio Westeros has a pair of kitties, and I've sent her the photos of them. And in fact, they're both right over there.
Right on. I know Morley from every A Song of Ice and Fire chat ever.
Yeah.
You seem to be everywhere I go. She's already there. You know what I mean?
Omnipresence. It's great.
Yeah. A pillar of the fan community. A true pillar.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Aziz, what you got coming up next?
Well, we have a lot of things coming up, some of which have been slow going, but because Valerie Reedus is difficult. But he did. How long appear in a page for? Cool. I did remember that right. Excellent. We have Valerie Reedus is finishing The Clash of Kings this month, and it's nice. The timing works out really well. A Storm of Swords is starting next month, right? The first episode of January will be A Storm of Swords. We're going to do a live stream with Stephen Atwell of Race for the Iron Throne, who is a deep thinker, philosophy and political thinker especially, but just Song of Ice and Fire in general. And we're going to talk about the War of Ninepenny Kings. And we're going to have our Blackwood episode has grown so big that it's been split in half. And it's going to be, the first half will be all about history, ancient history of House Blackwood, and then more recent history and current characters and outlook for the rest of the series. It's pretty similar format to the 2-part Manderley episode. And the 2-part Dane episode is actually kind of a similar feel to that, but more like the Manderley episode probably. Anyway, then we're doing, I'm here in Boston in part to work on Dance with the Dragons content with Radio Westeros. And that's obviously, we started doing that before we even knew there'd be a House of the Dragon. So that's pretty cool, but it gives us a little more incentive and a little more expectation of maybe more people seeing it, because once that show drops, there's going to be more people doing searches for Dance of the Dragons and such. So hopefully we'll already be, well set on that. I'll have a nice deep library. And I've really been slow on getting it done, but I've recorded the vocals for Jenny's song, and I can do the guitar when I get back home. So I'm going to release that as well.
I'm looking forward to hearing your version, man. I really am.
I finally settled on more of a stripped down version. I was overthinking it too much, trying to compare myself to all these other great covers out there, which is such a losing proposition.
You just got to do it Aziz's way.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not going to compare them. It's stupid to compare yourself to Florence and the Machine. Like, what? These are professional musicians. Come on, dude. No one's going to expect me to be as good as that. But in the back of your head, like you're trying to do a good job, and you can't help but compare yourselves to other people. And it's like, so I had to get over that. But I think I have now. And I'm probably forgetting something. But the biggest thing probably is we got Ashea a new computer, and I'm going to use your computer, which is cool, because so she can do better video editing, more intense video editing, because our plan has been to start releasing shorter form videos, not in place of the others, but in addition to, because we've had so many long episodes that have a few parts that would be really nice to distill those and be like, look, this is maybe the most important part of that, or this is a important part of that. And we also have tidbits from Valerie Reedus that we were talking about that aren't worthy of giant full episodes. Like I like that Arya theory I dropped. I want to make a 5 to 10 minute video about that, for example. I want to talk about our latest run through on the House of the Undying, because we have more information on after the end of the show. We're like, oh, the treason for love is probably Jon Snow. Like, okay, so that was one that people were guessing at that we probably don't have to guess at, or at least have a really strong guess instead of being like, I don't know. And there's so many patterns in there. Anyway, there's just so much to do with that. So that's really exciting. We've been trying to get that going for a while, but it takes a lot of planning, because it's basically like setting up a new channel, sort of. How are we going to do the intro and how are we going to do the outro? What formatting bits? Ashea's building objects, for videos and things like that. Again,
Ashea is actually pretty good at that stuff, though.
Yes, she is. She's very good at it, and that's why we need to get her new computer, because she's good enough to do it. But then the computer wasn't keeping up with her. It was like, she's ready to do something else, and the computer's still working.
Craftsmanship only goes so far. You need the right tools for the job.
Yeah, it's frustrating to like you want to record a song and your computer is spinning on its hourglass, and you're like, no, I'm ready now. So you don't want that to slow you down. You want to have that process, that flow, uninterrupted. So,
well, that sounds like you got a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline, man.
I want to break everyone's ears for a second. Also, before we leave, I've been thinking about Jenny's song so much that I accidentally. You ever wake up and have like a thought in your head that doesn't make any sense? It's mashed up with something else.
Oh yeah.
Well, I like to run with those sometimes, and let me pull this up here. So Ashea and I are both Queen fans. It's a good, Queen is fun.
My favorite band of all time.
Well, I realized that some things fit that shouldn't fit. Hide in the halls of the King of the Thrones, Jenny would dance with the ghosts. The ones you had lost and the ones you found, the ones who loved her the most. So yeah, never wanted to leave. never wanted to leave. So yeah, you can fit Queen to Jenny's song. You can do another one bites the Jenny.
Right.
Yeah. So got to have a little goofiness at the end.
That is, you just made my whole night, man.
I'm gonna sing it at Ice and FireCon. I'm gonna do the karaoke, the Filks.
Oh man, I've got a. I'm working on my silly cover song. It's not Queen. It's Sound of Silence. But
okay. Sound of the Silent, like the ship.
No, it's the Sound of Screaming, and it's a it's a Melisandre song.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Hello,
too. Like
fire, my old friend.
Nice.
I sacrifice to you again. That's how it starts. Anyway,
really good. That is really good.
Yeah, I'm gonna at con karaoke somewhere sometime that will be released. I'm having fun doing it. All right, y'all. Well, it's been a great stream. Aziz, I knew we'd have a blast just shooting the breeze for a couple hours.
Yep.
So go check out History of Westeros. Go check out all the things they've done. If you're here because I have Aziz, I've seen a few people that I know who they are, but like they're here for you, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, y'all.
You might want to check out my conversation I already did, and I know that nerd with Ashea, who is in fact the best.
She is. I see. Honor as horses, Ashea is the brick and mortar of History of Westeros. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And in fact, she's the one who encouraged us to get this started. She was like, "You should do this," because it was our friend Steve. If anyone who's been around long enough to follow the History of Westeros from the beginning, there was a different guy who kind of got us started, and he's since passed, unfortunately. But he was asking me to join, and Ashea was like, "You should definitely join this. You should do this." So She definitely, I couldn't credit her enough. So the praise is effusive for a reason.
Yeah. We all agree. Anyway, that having been said, there is an I Know That Nerd with a share. It's in the I Know That Nerd playlist. Go check that out if you want to see a similar type of conversation with a much prettier person.
Definitely true. Much prettier.
So
orders of magnitude.
I'm not going to troll you too hard in that regard, but it is what it is.
I didn't even feel like trolling.
Right. So yeah, join us next week. We'll be back. We're going to be looking at the first 3 episodes of season 4 of The Expanse. The week after that is Watchmen. Then we'll look at The Expanse again the week after that. Then we'll be in the new year, and I'm not sure what's happening next, but that's what's coming. Look on social media tomorrow. I'll be posting, fingers crossed, the new artwork for the channel.
Cool. Yeah, good luck. Hope so.
Again, all of Aziz's link or the links to Aziz's Twitter and History of Westeros YouTube channel are in the description. Links to my Twitter, the official channel Twitter, which is kind of in beta right now. It's not really running yet, but you can at least follow me, the official channel Twitter down in the YouTube section. Also linked to my Patreon. Patreon's going to get revamped this week, but it's not yet, so it's still just Steven Stark, but it will be changed over to Here Be Dragons. We're going to be renaming all the tiers and like adding a few extras here and there.
Dragon theme, maybe?
Yeah, dragon themed instead of like just general medieval themed.
It's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. So that having been said, thank you everyone for coming by and having a good time with us. And we'll be back in a week or two, or we'll be back in a week for the first few episodes of The Expanse. It's been 2 hours, y'all. It gets that way. I don't know how you stream for a good 2.5 hours and then a brief break. Here you are, and still going strong. All right, y'all. So thanks for making it a good time, and as always, peace and be excellent to each other.
Bye.